And I think we are live. Guys, as always, you know the game. Please let us know if the sound is working properly, if the camera is working properly, and so on. All right. So, yeah, we had some problems here already. But yeah, I think now it should be solved. Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah,
I can
pretty
hear
good.
you.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I was hearing me twice. Okay, but now, once again, this is happening when you are going live sometimes. But now, welcome to the FRENS VALIDATOR YouTube channel. I'm Juri Maibaum, and today I have the pleasure to welcome Youssef and about Governance Proposal 95. And Governance Proposal 95 aims to launch or co-launch a grants program, a brand new grants program that is coming to the Cosmos Hub. We will discuss the numbers, and the numbers are 588,000 ATOM. This is what the governance proposal asks for. And yeah, we will dive deeper into this, and also we will talk about what advantages this program could have. But before we do that, let me introduce you to my lovely guests, Youssef, Amrani, and Xavier. Meegan. Youssef used to work as a community analyst at Messari, and today he is a core contributor of the Cosmos Hub. And Xavier is a good friend of mine and also CIO at my favorite company in the crypto industry, Correspond. They are also validating on various Cosmos chains and also beyond that. So welcome, guys. Glad to have you on.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and again, today we will talk about the grants program. You guys renamed it actually. Now it's called the ATOM Accelerator DAO, or this should be the name in the future at least. So before we dive deeper into that and also into the requested amount of 588,000 ATOM, I think it makes sense to start at the bottom layer here to make sure that we are not missing out on something. So what is a grants program, and how have grants been handled in the Cosmos ecosystem so far? And why do we need to renew something? Why do we need a new grants program, in your opinion? So maybe, Youssef, you want to start with that.
Yeah, sure. So the idea behind this grant program is like we have three goals. So the first goal is to provide an alternative source of funding to the community pool through like a dedicated structure of people with relevant experience. So that's the first goal. The second goal is basically to start building the ATOM pipeline of contributors by like giving them access to fair compensation and you know like also attract builders from other Cosmos chains. And then the third goal is basically to remove some of the burden on public governance. We've seen like recently some very controversial proposals like Prop 88 or 89, if I remember, about you know the videos where you know there were a lot of fightings, and you know we think that there is a path forward for these kind of proposals, that it's better like to funnel them to like a dedicated structure so that you know the community can focus on like on more like strategic matters than like just like basically giving grants of 2000 ATOM. And so our like vision and the way we want to structure this program is to become a DAO that we call the ATOM Accelerator DAO. So it's a team of 7 cosmonauts, and we also came up with an oversight committee of 3 people, and we're basically asking for a 9-month mandate and like you said, a capital allocation of 588,000 ATOM. And so the role of the oversight committee is basically to provide like a self-regulation function within the DAO so that the DAO can become like a self-driving entity, right? I mean, obviously the community will still be there like to do the oversight, and at some point after 9 months, if the program is good, like we will want to renew it, and the community will have to vote on that, and they will get like a full report from the oversight committee with all the transparency updates, the operational updates on all the grantees. Was it effective? Was it not effective? The completion rate, etc. So we can have a lot of metrics and KPIs that people, the community can see. And like we also think that this DAO, like it offers more flexibility, like much better flexibility actually than the community pool, because it also like enables proactive allocation of capital. Like for example, development of in-house investment teams in collaboration with the community. And what other very strong advantage is that it enables accountability of grant recipients, by doing close follow-ups with them and publishing operational updates. That's something that right now we do not have with the community pool. So some team requests 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 ATOM from the community pool. The vote passes, they get the money. Like they could very well disappear, and there is no structure, not whatsoever, to control that. So that's something that we're bringing with this grant program. And maybe Xavier wants to add a few things on this.
Yeah, I mean, you explained it very well, Youssef. As to the why do we need this grant program? I think right now in the hub, sometimes I think it misses out on some critical teams that build or organize certain events, for example, just purely because there's not really a dedicated team to looking at grant type projects. So you have Informal, which does a fantastic job, I think, at many things related to the hub, but that this is one team, and the hub has many teams that work on it. Oh, sorry, let me turn my Slack off. The hub has many teams that work on it, and I think the grant sort of program can be this decentralized entity with no relation to other teams now working on the hub that works with other teams working on the hub, like Informal, but then also with other teams that maybe Informal, etc., don't have the time to necessarily go through exactly what they're doing. I think a great example, I can mention right now because it's relevant to this show. Yuri, you organized Cosmoverse, and then, Cosmoverse, what is Cosmoverse? It's this conference which is so big for the community and for growing the community and for the growth of Cosmos. And right now, I don't think Cosmos Hub itself is potentially funding it enough. And then you have other teams like Osmosis, which are prepared to fund it a lot. And so what that sort of tells me is that, there needs to be, at least the hub needs to match other types of, blockchains in the Cosmos ecosystem for critical events that boost not just the growth of the hub, but also of the ecosystem. So I just think now is a good time. We saw with ATOM 2.0, there was a contentious vote, which unfortunately didn't pass. I think small steps is the right approach. So I really like the interchain security proposal, and I hope that passes. And I think, a grant committee is a first step towards this sort of allocator vision of perhaps some sub-DAOs forming. Like, I'm a big advocate of DAOs, many grant DAOs or investment DAOs, or a bit of experimentation with the funds and trying to grow, Cosmos Hub and what it can do and the activities it does. And, interchain security is one great area, but I think there's also some other areas, like if that's grants for now and this is successful in 6 to 9 months time, maybe there's another DAO that's proposed and or formed. And I think a last thing I would like to mention, which I'm not sure if Youssef agrees with, but right now you can argue, I guess, from the community, it's somewhat centralized, but I think it's necessary to have this at the very start, to have 7 to 9 people that everyone knows, the people. And then if this is successful, you can open it up and it becomes more of a permissionless DAO. Maybe you can vote other members in and things like that. But I think at the start, in any sort of new mission for a network, Solana is a good example of this, where, at the start they were quite centralized. They had this sort of team working on it in the core, but then now it's very decentralized. Validator set has grown a lot, and the network itself, really benefited from having a core team grow it in one direction at the start. And I think this grant committee is somewhat similar to this, where, it's a new idea that needs to be tested with, 7 to 9 people, which have a lot of experience and expertise in the Cosmos with technical things, validator things, also research things, prove that this works. And then after that, you can open up the floor and we can try and get some other, grant committee members on and grow it even further, and all for the benefit of ATOM holders, of course.
I mean, all of what you've said makes a lot of sense. I mean, you also mentioned some some examples, and we will also dive deeper into this Cosmoverse example actually, because this also has something to do with conflicts of interest. But I mean, for me, from a broad perspective, it makes sense, because another problem here is I want to mention is, for example, let's say you want to launch a pretty cool project, and then you need to keep your fingers crossed for, I think, like 2 weeks that the price not collapses within this period of time. So, for example, we experienced that with Cosmoverse, where we're like asking for a certain amount of ATOM, and within this period, within the voting period, the Solana fall down happened, and this was of course pretty negative for the ATOM price. So there are some things where I can really say I understand this, but let's get to the community aspect of all of this. So you received a lot of feedback from the community in the forum prior to the launch of the proposal on the hub. And some people argue that you didn't take their feedback too serious, or that you did not include too many aspects of the feedback. Precisely, this means that people are arguing that besides changing the name of the program or reducing the requested amount of 588,000 ATOM, nothing much changed. So, Youssef, maybe you want to respond on that. Do you believe you have taken the community serious enough, and or was it like basically everything just to change these two things?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and that is a question that is not easy to answer, because like the information travels at a certain speed, and so sometimes like you do a change and people just don't see it because it's somewhere on the forum. So like I just give like a very quick roundup of like the latest change that we brought. So the first one that you mentioned, it was by far the most common feedback that we got was, this is too much money. So we basically decreased that by almost 20%, 18.5%, like you said. But that's not the only change that we brought. For example, we were one of the comments I've been seeing a lot on the forum is the wish from the community that the 4 validators on this program would abstain from voting, or would vote abstain, basically. And so this is a done deal. If you look at right now, Minscan, Chorus One has abstained, I think a few hours ago, and like we found an agreement internally, like with our own team, the ATOM Accelerator DAO, to basically have the 4 validators abstain on that, because we think it's the right thing to do, and we were directly responding to the community feedback on that. The other thing that we've been changing is the name, because when we posted the proposal, our intention was not to become like the official version of the Cosmos Hub. I mean, that would make sense, because it's totally against the spirit of decentralization and fair competition. So as soon as we saw that some people understood that as a canonical grant program, we just basically changed the name, and put in the changelog that we do not consider ourselves as the canonical grant program, and any DAO is welcome to self-assemble, compete with us, and the more competition, the happier we are. And then we also listening to the community on the vesting side. So we've seen. This is not on the forum yet. I'll do that right after the call, okay, today. So please bear with me. But yeah, we'll have a vesting schedule, and that's a direct wish from the community, because they're scared, and that's totally understandable, that that money, would be swapped to stable coins or whatever other currency. And I mean, it's still like 0.2% of the total supply. So yeah, that's totally understandable, and we're definitely going to do that. So we decided basically to have a vesting schedule over 6 months. So like every month, 1/6 of the allocation gets added to the and that will be done like internally. Unfortunately, we do not have like a module right now on the Cosmos Hub like to manage the vesting. So what's going to happen is, yes, the entire money is coming on the multisig, the 588,000. But what we're going to be doing is and that will be like, the community will be able to see that, because like we will publish the on-chain wallet on the website that we will be building, and we have like a social understanding, kind of a social contract with the community, that we would not spend more than what we just said, 1/6 basically of vesting over 6 months. So those are the changes that we made. There are other changes. Maybe I don't know, like if you have some you want to share, Xavier.
Maybe Yuri, did you want to say something there?
Yeah, just wanted to add one thing, because like one of the fellow cosmonauts asked a couple of questions. Prometheus, I'm seeing you in the comments, and actually all of your questions will be asked within this interview. But yeah, just wanted to post his first question here because it fits to what you just said, Youssef. So the thing is, I mean, the problem here is also that the requested amount of ATOM also represents 0.2% of the current circulating supply. So you mentioned it. So after the call, we will have some better numbers to work with, and a clear structure of what will happen with these ATOMs when they arrive on your address, right?
Yes, correct. Yes, 100%.
Okay. Yeah, that's of course pretty important here. And Xavier, maybe you want to add something on that as well. So also with the procedure, what will happen after the money arrived, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so I mean, I think one thing I wanted to mention is that I wasn't so active on the community forum in terms of writing, but I did read a lot of community feedback, and you know, some people that I really respect in the Cosmos community were not happy with all of the points, and like I think a lot of the arguments they made against some of them were valid. And I think one important thing to mention is, you know, we are trying really hard to try and incorporate as much feedback as possible from the community, even like as the proposal's still up. Like Youssef mentioned a few points there that, you know, we have changed it. You know, we have brought down the budget significantly, well, not significantly, but around 20%. You know, we listened to the numbers that people wanted. And I think one important thing with any governance proposal is that it's quite hard to please everyone. Like, we're doing our real best to please the majority and try and get it as right as we can. Yeah, essentially, it's still theoretically a work in progress, and we're talking to people in a day in, day out about, like, you know, speaking with people, does this make sense? And then in terms of like when we have the funds, so this is another good question that I totally, again, if I was like in the community, I'd be asking the same question, so don't worry. So yeah, I guess as Youssef mentioned, you know, we have, I don't know, I might recommend, if anyone's interested, you can check out my Twitter. I wrote a thread. My Twitter's 0xave, and you can sort of read about like a theoretical or hypothetical allocation of where this capital could go. So I wanted to sort of mention, like, I think a tweet actually went out today from like Confio, for example, which is sort of like shutting down a lot of their public good work. And like, I think this is just a classic example of like, the fact is that, you know, these community pools have capital, but the problem here is that the capital is idle and not being used efficiently. And then how do you judge if capital is being used efficiently? This is really hard, especially in a grant program, because like, you know, as an investor, maybe you want returns and you have expected returns, and, you know, you can model it and do due diligence to work out if the value is there. With a grants program, it's really important to make sure that the team that's receiving the grant is building tools that clearly provides value for like the wider hub community. It doesn't necessarily have to be monetary. It could also be like saving time, more convenience. Like, this sort of stuff is really hard to quantify and put a dollar value on it. So I guess in terms of how we're using the funds, and I saw the question before, which was like, if it was 30% of the community pool, I think one reply to that might be, okay, that's definitely true, but I guess the community pool is still growing. So, and I hope as it grows that other people take initiative, and, you know, as long as they're clear and their objectives, and, you know, it's transparent and you can see they're trying to bring growth. And with us, like, yeah, I have given 2 examples, you know, Cosmoverse, Confio, like things like this, in my opinion, and I think other people in the community would agree, are like some good examples of types of things that we would like to give grants to, because they clearly benefit the whole entire Cosmos ecosystem and the hub, which in my opinion, is the best type of thing to fund. And then, yeah, in terms of like other projects, like, it's not like we've reached out saying we're doing a grants program right now, like, would you like this capital? We're sort of waiting to see if this proposal goes past. And then after that, I mean, Youssef might be able to speak more here, but we'll sort of have a website up, hopefully, and you can apply for these grants. And there'll be a lot more details on like the process, and then we'll go from there. And I think throughout all of this, the really important thing is just communication. And I think, you know, we've tried communicating as best we can so far, like even in something like this with you, Yuri, I think is a good step. But it's important not just through the proposal, but also after, that we frequently update everyone with like our agenda, objectives, conflicts of interest, biases, etc., and also make sure that we're, you know, eventually providing value to the hub. So yeah, I don't know, Youssef, if you want to sort of
thanks very much, Xavier. Yeah, I also wanted to ask something add something basically on the question that I just saw from Prometheus on 30% of the community pool. So yes, it's a 30%, but it's 30% today, right? So like a month from now, that amount is going to be maybe 25%. And 3 months from now, that amount is going to be 20%. Why is that? Because we increased, the community increased from 2 to 10%, the tax, right? And so that means that every month, on average, as of today, 350,000 ATOM gets added. So if you look at it, like you can like tell many stories with numbers, right? Like it depends like how you see it. So when you present it this way, it's 30%, it looks really bad, right? It looks really, really bad. But if you look at it the other way, which is it's 2 months of inflation, that's it. So that means that every year you could found as much as 6 grant program of this size. That's a lot, right? So when you see it, when you frame it like that, it sounds a bit different. And also one argument that I keep giving, and I think it's important here, is if you look at OGP, the Osmosis Grant Program, you know, back in the days, in April of 2022, they asked for $10.5 million, like in Osmo price back in the days. So that's like 30 to 35% more than the Cosmos Hub is asking for this grant program, for a market cap that is 8 times larger. 8 times larger. Like it's very important, like to have the scale of the numbers and the perspective. So yes, it's not a small amount. We're not saying it's a small amount. Yes, $8 million as of today, current prices, is a lot of money. But like just put it in perspective with what Solana is doing, with what Ethereum is doing. I mean, the Cosmos Hub aim to compete with those projects, right? We shouldn't be competing with smaller projects. We want to compete with bigger projects. And so in retrospect, I don't think that the amount is totally like is unreasonable, basically.
Just one thing, but just to add to that, because I think that's like very important. I mean, I definitely see your point there, Youssef, 100%. But is this not something where you also have to ask yourself if your governance proposal have been written well enough? Because like what you are saying here, I mean, you are a full-time cosmonaut, Xavier, you are a full-time cosmonaut, Youssef, as well. And if the average community member sees this proposal and doesn't understand that there is a community tax involved, that what you just mentioned, when this is missing, is there also like, do we also need to talk about that these governance proposals have to be like written more precisely in a way that everyone is really able to understand what is going on here? Because I mean, at the end of the day, you're also asking for quite a decent amount of money. And if I ask for a decent amount of money, I also need to present it in a way that the people I pitch it to, which is at the end of the day, the community, understands it, and not just people like me who also run a validator. This is something you should also consider, in your opinion.
I mean, I'm not totally sure I understand your question. Maybe Xavier, you had a better understanding of the question.
I understand it. No, I think it's a good point. I mean, you try and be as clear as possible in the proposal, which I think, to be fair, Youssef has done like a great job at, and no one's going to get it perfectly right, as I keep mentioning. But I do think so. This is a classic example, yeah, of like maybe some people in the community haven't heard of this community tax, or like where's the money coming from, etc. It's like information is actually a problem. Like, where's the information stored? How do I find the information? How do I educate people? Like, why is this a problem right now in the hub? Because no one's actually really doing it. You know, okay, there's some teams working on certain parts of the hub, but who's actually working on like the single source of truth for like what's going on, for example, and like sharing that with everyone else? And like, you know, who's researching this? Like, who's creating the content? Like, who's being supported doing this? So I think it's a great point that, like, you know, it would be perfect if you can explain it in the best way possible. But it would also be perfect if you had some website or something like that, which sort of told you everything about ATOM right now, Cosmos Hub, and the plans and what's happening and stuff like that, which I think isn't necessarily there. which is actually a good excuse and a good example for like why a grant program could be necessary here, because something like this, in my opinion here again, would be funded. Like I would be happy, and I think other people in the community would be happy to like help someone out who's prepared to like accumulate all this information and put it in one place. And I also want to mention one thing just on Youssef's previous comment on like the Osmosis grant program. So I have a lot of respect and time for the Reverie guys, and I actually think they do a great job. And I think they suffer a lot of community backlash, which I think is actually a bit harsh on them, because I think, you know, I can say as a part of Chorus One, you know, sometimes they might bring things to our attention which we might not have been previously aware of. And this is perfect as like a grant sort of team, because they're doing BD and outreach, which is the same thing that Cosmos Hub would be doing if it had a grant program, but isn't doing right now. And in return, for example, you know, Chorus One, we just announced that we have an MEV grant on DYDX, and, you know, DYDX is the beneficiary of, you know, DYDX having this grant program and Reverie working with them. You know, whereas with us, or, you know, with Osmosis, for example, with, you know, there might be some other MEV thing and they might reach out to us and we might do it again. It's like they're the middle link between great teams that have aligned interests and like ecosystems that don't know these teams. You know, you have to be like a bit of a connector. It's like, so with the hub, ideally what happens here is it's a committee that sort of, you know, rocks up. There's 7 to 9 of us, and there's some outreach going out. Like we might be looking for something certain, maybe the community wants something, maybe interchain security needs something, and we know there's a team that's interested in this in some other ecosystem, and we do the outreach saying like, you know, let's say like another example here is like distributed validator technology. So this is like quite big in Ethereum right now, and this is becoming like more important as withdrawals come out, and like it's really improving the security in the infrastructure of the actual blockchain on Ethereum. Can this come to Cosmos? Yes. Who's bringing it to Cosmos? Well, I mean, probably grants to begin with, and who's giving these grants? Well, probably it'll be Osmosis and teams like DYDX and things like that with a lot of capital, and who are prepared to, you know, prepared to give up a bit of risk to bring them into the ecosystem. And then they're going to be the first beneficiaries of this. And then the hub sort of loses out, I guess, is what I'm saying. So ideally here, you just have this team that, you know, hopefully can act as well as, you know, Reverie on other sort of blockchains and other grant programs in the space, that brings new, exciting, promising teams into the ecosystem that can benefit the hub, which also hopefully, because the hub is, you know, part of a greater ecosystem, that can also benefit the ecosystem itself. So yeah, I don't know if you've got any questions in sort of what I just mentioned there.
I mean, all of this makes a lot of sense, but to pick it up from there, so DYDX is now supporting Chorus One in terms of your MEV research. I've read about it like very briefly. I think that sounds super cool, but I think from here I can move on to another question that that I really struggle a bit right now is, I mean, you also mentioned Cosmoverse in the beginning. We proposed governance proposals before, and you have 4 reviewers on the team, which are Mikey from Cosmos Station, you, Xavier from Chorus One, then Nistel from Citadel, and then Dylan from Imperator. If these 4 people are reviewing any governance proposal, like if you rule it like super strict, I wouldn't be able to propose something to your grants program, because Citadel, Cosmos Station, Chorus One all have sponsored Cosmoverse before, so you're somewhat our client, so to say. Xavier, we are like also friends, so like if we take it like very seriously, you wouldn't be able to to have a look, or have you wouldn't be able to review the proposal that I would propose, and also Dylan from Imperator. So there is clearly in this scenario, there would be, like, if you take it super strictly, a conflict of interest. And what you just mentioned, if Chorus One would do something, I mean, we all have something to do with each other in this very small ecosystem. So how are you tackling this urgent problem of conflict of interest, also to talk a little bit about transparency and these things here?
That's a very sensitive question. And honestly, like, I think there is no perfect answer. There are a few things that you can do. So like the most obvious thing that we can do is basically to recuse ourselves when signing a transaction, like to basically give the decision on a grant that has some level of relationship with our direct involvement, like for example with other projects. So for example, I'll just give my own example. I'm a member of the economic committee of the IEC stablecoin. It's a few hours per week, so I'm still able to do this position of the running the DAO full time. But let's say that there is at some point a grant about IEC. I mean, obviously, I'm gonna recuse myself, or even a grant. For example, like I've seen Don Kryptonium talk about my involvement with the IEC, and I mentioned on the podcast that like we could bring other stable coins to be issued directly on the new consumer chain, right? That is issuing USDC. I mean, let's say that was like a proposition made. I would clearly recuse myself, right? Like if we were to give a grant to another stable coin that I think is a good addition and will bring value to IST, but obviously I'm just gonna recuse myself. So that, but I think there are like two level of answers. So there is the first order conflict of interest, which is like a direct conflict of interest with serious consequences, like with serious benefit for the person voting. And then there is a second order conflict of interest, like for example what you said about Cosmoverse, and so I think it's going to be a work in progress. So there is the obvious, and then that's one of the reasons also why we're like building that function of an oversight committee, right? Is basically to look at those things, to listen to the community, like what is fair, what is not fair, and to come up with a set of internal controls that are decided, and they would be in charge of doing that, not us. So right now, all I'm saying is we have just the basics in terms of conflict of interest, but like that we will have like a much more detailed policy, like once the DAO is up and running, because I think like this is part of like internal policy, internal governance at the DAO level, and it has to be done like by the oversight committee, like for sure, like in collaboration with the review committee, like the 7 members, like we need to consult, right? So that it makes sense. But yes, we'll have like many more details right after like the DAO is basically established.
Yeah, go ahead, Xavier.
Yeah, I'll just sort of strip it back to one concrete example here. So you mentioned Cosmoverse, and this is a good example. So what if Chorus One sponsors Cosmoverse and the grant program also decides to sponsor it? Is this a conflict of interest? Like, I would probably argue here it's actually not. I mean, Chorus One isn't profiting from sponsoring Cosmoverse. Like, our name is there, but like we're doing that to support the organizers and trying to bring more people into the community. It's not to try and make it proper for our business. And I guess the grant committee represents the stakeholders of the hub. And if the hub thinks that it should be sponsoring Cosmoverse because it's for the benefit of Cosmoverse, and that's also like a good thing for the hub, then I think that's fair enough. And like, obviously there are two different decisions here where like, if someone like us or Imperator or whatever sponsors Cosmoverse, this would be a decision to support you. Like, it's not like they're winning money here. If it's an investment decision, this is where it's a conflict of interest. Let's say there's a project that I think in the future could receive investment from us or something like that. I will for sure recuse myself from the very start and just say I can't be involved here because I'm seeing it from an investment standpoint, and I would prefer other people who don't see it with this standpoint to make the decisions because I'm biased. If it's Cosmoverse and I'm giving some capital to some people who really deserve it, and Chorus also thinks similarly, that's not a conflict of interest. That's just giving capital to community members who really deserve it and bring a lot of value to the ecosystem.
Can I add something real quick on this one?
Yeah.
There is also like the crypto is basically like, the way I see it is the future of work. Like Web3 is the future of work, right? And so in this new work environment, people are used, like it's common knowledge that you can work on multiple projects, right? Like that's like, I think like the 9 to 5, I'm not saying it's a dying model, but like we're moving away further and further. Like it's going to take maybe a few decades like to complete the transition. But like in a world where a contributor like in crypto or in Web3 has, let's say, 2 or 3 contribution of like 10 hours each, those questions will arise. And so basically like the definition of conflict of interest, I think, has to be revised, like like specifically to crypto. That's the first point. And the second point is exactly what Xavier said, is that when it's about like personal profit, like monetary profit, like investments profit, then like that's clearly a red line. But anything that is not like tied to like strict monetary profit, like that can be discussed, and we have to be flexible also. Otherwise, like we're just gonna basically prevent innovation and like stop a lot of things from working flawlessly.
I think this is like super important here to highlight this, and yeah, also wish to have seen this a little bit like clearer maybe in the governance proposal, because this is for me now I'm seeing a red line here. What does conflict of interests mean? Because that's a term that you can squeeze in a very, very long way. But I want to pick up like not a question but a statement actually, but it goes hand in hand with my next question. It's I recommend that all grants greater than 10,000 ATOM need to go through the community proposal on chain. Comes with a criticism that I can also a little bit understand, is that in, I quote Don Cryptonium here, in what world are 100,000 ATOM a medium grant? Because as the time of recording, we are talking about 1.3 million US dollars here. And I mean, ATOM can also increase in price. And then, I don't know, we talk about 2 million, $3 million, whatever. So can we talk a little bit about the declaration of what a medium size grant is, and the skepticism of some community members that they argue, hey, for us 100,000 ATOM or a little bit less is not a medium or small size grant.
So I think there is something we need to update on the forum, because I think the way we should have framed it is like not 10,000 to 100,000 ATOM, but more like 100,000 to $1 million, like in dollar terms, right? Because I agree that like if the price of ATOM goes to $25 and we're talking about 100,000 ATOM, that's $2.5 million. So what we meant to say, and that's a mistake, full apology, I'm going to update that on the forum after, is like the amount is given in ATOM, right? Because it is what is sitting on the treasury of the DAO. But like how we calculate this amount is US dollar based, not ATOM based. And so if the price of ATOM goes up, well, we're not gonna give 100,000 ATOM. We're gonna give less, basically. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing on like the definition of what is a medium grant, what is a large grant, like all those things are like just like there is a lot of nuance to it, and what is medium to you, what is medium to me, like we can discuss all day about that. What is important to know is that for first thing is those grants, like the large grants, like let's say that were mentioned, 100,000 ATOM, which I think should be like $1 million and not 100,000 ATOM. Like if we give that, it's going to be 2 to 3 projects max, and that's just common sense, because the treasury like is $8 million in today's terms. So we can't give more than three projects like that. Otherwise, it's going to be more than $3 million, because we still need like to fund the pipeline for smaller grants, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is, in the case where we give those like $1 million grant, we're not giving a blank check right now, right? Like 1 million, take it, disappear, do whatever you want with the money. That's not how it happens. It's going to be milestone based, right? So like you give like, let's say, and that's also, we're going to have to specify that. We couldn't specify it before, because again, that's internal policy, but those discussions are going to happen much more in details as soon as the vote ends. And like if the proposal pass, is like we will do like multiple unlocks. So let's say there is a very interesting project that we want to fund. We could give them, let's say, a third, like $300,000, for example. And we specify like what are the milestones we want to work on. And then after a few months, when the milestone is completed, they come to us with the result. We look at the results. If we're not satisfied with the results, we'll just kill the project, and that money will go somewhere else. So basically that $1 million will not be completed. It's going to be like 300,000. If the project is delivering and we see potential and the team is serious, then you unlock another tranche of $300,000. Then they go, they do their work. They come back to you after 3 months and say, hey, we finished this milestone as well. Now, what do we want to do? If we're happy, we give that money. If we're not happy, we don't give that money. And so, like, it's much more nuanced than just like giving a blank check of $1 million. Like, like that's how I see it.
Question to precisely that, because I think this is also what the community asked a lot. I mean, what you just mentioned makes completely sense. And this is how most programs should work and how money should be spent in that matter. But now the community also asked why the concept that you just described was not an option for the grant program itself, because what would happen if this proposal passes is the money goes to the grants program and it is like a check and you would use that money. But let's be honest, every project in the world can fail. This risk is always in the room. So why was it not an option to do precisely what you just mentioned for the grants program, i.e. we start with, let's say, 100,000 ATOM, and then after a time, another 100,000 ATOM will follow, and so on and so forth. And this also goes, of course, with the salary paycheck that some community members are worried about. So the concept that you just described, what is like perfect, why wasn't this an option for the grants program itself?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'll give you like a straight answer. Like I have, like this is the perfect answer to advertise this grant program, like what kind of grants we could be giving. So right now on the Cosmos Hub, you do not have the possibility to do recurring stream of payments. I don't know if you're aware, but you cannot, right? So that means that we would have to go to like another basically like governance proposal to ask for that like every 3 months. I don't think that makes sense, right? Like you have to trust the team behind the project. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that's exactly the kind of grants we could be giving, is to build like that's a small grant, like it's just a small module. Like I'm not an engineer or developer, but like my understanding is it's something very trivial to build on the Cosmos Hub. So we could basically like give a grant. I don't know what would be the amount, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be a small amount, where you build a module where you can configure a stream of payments, right? And so and vesting also, like right now we do not have the vesting on the Cosmos Hub, so you could be building that. So like the governance stack on the Cosmos Hub and in Cosmos in general is very poor, very, very poor. And so there are a lot of like quick wins, low hanging fruits that we could be doing with this grant program by being intentional, like have a checklist on what are the important things in governance, like quick wins that we can do. Let's do them. Let's give grants. And it's going to be beneficial for the upcoming generation and the upcoming DAOs, because now we have the infrastructure for recurring payments, for vesting. So otherwise, like for example, this amount of 588,000 ATOM, if we had that module, we could say, okay, send me 3 payments of 200,000 ATOM each after 3 months. We could have done that. We could also have say, instead of trusting us with doing our own vesting and ensuring that vesting, you could do the vesting at the hub level and just unlock the money progressively. So all those things, like I'm passionate about governance, and we want to work on them, like to facilitate the lives of like future Cosmos Hub contributors, basically.
Yeah, maybe Yuri, if you don't mind, I might just quickly add to that. So I think it's a good question, like, what's a small or medium or a large grant? And I think like one of the reasons why I'm excited to join this committee, hopefully, if it passes, it's my role amongst others to do due diligence and really ask the hard questions of like, why does this team need $1 million? And they better really be impressing me. And I better have a very, very clear idea of what the value is that they're bringing to the hub. Otherwise, I'm not giving them the $1 million. I think for the community, anyone listening to this, like, I am a community member as well. And I also don't want a bunch of ATOM going to a team that doesn't deserve it. And I would prefer if it's like $1 million grant that we don't just break it after giving 300K, because that's not necessarily an efficient use of capital. What you need to do is you need to spend the time beforehand and really question, do the due diligence, really understand, like, are they the real deal? Is this value actually there? Like, I think this is going to be really rare, like that people will get large grants. Like, we're not necessarily saying don't apply and try and convince us, like, please do your best. But it's also our role to really analyze and make sure that this is warranted, basically. And this is like why it's important to have the team that Youssef's collected, because, a lot of us have this investment experience, like Even Better Future, one of the program managers, he's spent a lot of time himself as an angel and a VC. We have Jason Choi as well, who's got a lot of experience in accelerators and incubators and VC sort of work and due diligence. So I think that's really important. And I also just wanted to address the second point, which is also a good point. Like, why don't you start small and build from there, which like I think would be ideal, actually. Like if you could go from like 100K, then 100K, then 100K, like, But realistically, the hub is worth billions of dollars, and it's a bit too big to do this where you have multiple proposals and you keep coming back every month. And what it ends up turning into is a bit of an operational nightmare, because we have to spend time lobbying like we're sort of doing right now. We have to speak with different people. We have to make sure the proposal's right. We have to make sure everyone's interests are aligned. And to do this every month is like, definitely in my ideal scenario, this would be done. But I think there's so many stakeholders, there's a lot at stake, the value is there. It's a bit easier to just spend time now. And funnily enough, like just during this proposal and also through ATOM 2.0, I've been doing a lot of thinking about like governance in general, especially on the hub. And I've got some ideas around how to make the process smoother between like the forum to proposal stage that I've sort of learned from the last two proposals that have had a lot of questions asked, even though I thought both proposals were relatively well written. So I think there's a stage in between that can also be worked on, which like maybe even as a grant, someone could work on this, like, and potentially with the idea that I have if they were interested. But yeah, I think realistically, you know, we sort of have to do it all in one. Like I can tell you right now, I'm spending time the last week following the forum, jumping on this call, speaking with the guys and girls in the Telegram about what's going on. Like, you know, doing this every month for like 100K each, it's definitely not going to be worth the effort almost. So it's better to just hit the nail on the head, try and address all the questions now, which I hope we're doing in this show. And then, you know, obviously we're going to continue listening to the community, and if there's anything we can improve, we're going to do that. And then it'll go to vote. I think one maybe last thing I'll mention here is, you know, it'll go to vote and then what? So, you know, it's either going to be a yes or a no. And there's two options essentially. If it's a yes, you know, we have a strategy and a plan, and we know types of things we'd like to fund, and, you know, we have this vesting for the people, and we know like we have sizes, etc., and we'll be open for applications, and like that part's more clear. Actually, the part that isn't so clear is like if it's a no. And so I think this is also something that to bear in mind, where it's like if you had the way of like 100K, 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 and you get it like twice, and then the third time you go up and then it's like a no, it's like it's a lot of uncertainty of like, will it be passed again? And just the fact that like you already have to go through quite a vigorous process to propose and get people to get on your side and try and, you know, have them believe in you, to do this like over and over. Like let's say this is rejected, which it definitely still might be. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I hope it doesn't, but you know, for us to come together again, it's like, it's slightly demotivating. And I think it also, you know, disincentivizes some people who really care about the Cosmos Hub, which I do right now. And like, if this doesn't pass, I'm not going to leave the hub. But, you know, I feel like I could provide value personally to the hub, and I'm ready to do that. And I'm grateful that Youssef has given me the opportunity to try and do that. And I think, you know, now is sort of the time to bring this together and just get it right, get the team right, give it a bit of a longer duration to test it. And it is a test. At the end of the day, it's 9 months. And one last thing here as well is like, we have this capital, but like, don't forget, like, I'm not going to rubbish through all this capital and then like, it's all gone. Like Youssef, myself, everyone on the team, we have social capital at stake. What does that mean?
Yeah.
If we just blow 600K ATOM, that we are ATOM stakeholders ourselves. We care about the hub and the community. This also looks bad for us, our reputation, there's reputational risk. Like we have implicit stake that we can't, or we won't actually make these kind of errors. Like we have to be really diligent in the way that we distribute these grants and make sure that value is accruing to ATOM and for the greater community.
Question to that, and also for the people in the chat. So I'm recording this in a co-working space and I might get kicked out of this room. So I need to pick up your questions a little bit by now. So I see that there are a lot of questions, but they're like responses to immediate statements from Xavier or from Youssef. And now they seem a little bit out of context. So I can't really figure out what the whole question was. So if you could be so kind and you would like to ask a question, please write them down like as a proper big question, so I have a little bit of context here. In the meantime, my last follow-up question here, which is also obviously very important here, is, I mean, you mentioned that your social capital is on risk here. I totally understand that. Still, and I think that's also important to address here, because this is also where some community members felt a little bit uncomfortable about, is this this payroll. So I would like to dive deeper into that. So some people mentioned, hey, for most of you guys, that's not a full-time job, or they they question if the people who will do this full time do this really full time, because of course you can say a lot of things on the forum, but what actually happens then nobody knows. So could you maybe elaborate a little bit on this, how these numbers came together, and just that we have some transparency here, because of course we see the numbers on the forums and not the explanation, so to say.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, those numbers are pretty fair. Like they're not disconnected from the market or above the market. And like I've been seeing like some pushback, not a lot of pushback, but some pushback. And look, I understand like people are a bit stressed. It's the bear market. Like some people have lost their jobs and been laid off, etc. And so like the environment is not exactly like the best, right? Like the financial and economic environment right now. And so like I've been talking with Better Future, and I'm ready like to cut basically my our salaries, like the two salaries for Ryan and myself by 10%. If I look at the numbers here, like I just pulled out the data basically today. Like the salary for a grant director, like it ranges from $130,000 to $205,000, and the median salary is $160,000. So my salary, like on 9 months, is like I think 108,000, but over a year it's like 140, I think 144. So like I'm in the low range with the current with what we're currently asking. So if I lower by 10%, we become like at 80% of the median salary basically in the private sector. And I see this as public service, right? Like because this is from the community pool, right? Like so it definitely should be seen as public service. And usually in public service, like salaries like are 70 to 80% of the private sector. So 80% of the private sector would give like basically 10,700 per month. So like I'm ready to cut that this way, and Better Future. And I hope this is gonna like that the committee is gonna be pleased, but with that, it's not a big difference on the grand scheme of things. But like yeah, and also like I'm very passionate, right? Like you can see it here. I've been a contributor like for the last 2 years. My reputation is on the line here. Like and that's something that I think people don't appreciate enough, is that we're not anons, right? Like we have our names in there, and so like if you screw up, like it's gonna be a long lasting damage. It's a lot of pressure, this job, a lot. It's a lot of responsibility. Like we're building something from scratch. Like this is pure entrepreneurship. And so like I think like going to the private sector and finding a job would probably be like more paying for myself. But I love the Cosmos Hub and the Cosmos ecosystem, and this is exactly what I want to do. And so like the money itself is not the key driver behind like my decision like to build this program. And so yeah, we'll cut the salary. That's not a problem, by 10%. And next year maybe we'll like if this proposal pass and after 9 months we want to renew the program and we run again for a renewal, we might come up with new compensation models, like for example performance-based compensation, because I've seen that question also asked in the community. But look, everything is not perfect. We just need to start somewhere, and I think that there is an kind of urgency to start because we're like lacking behind a bit, at least for the Cosmos Hub. And so yeah, let's get started and see and iterate afterwards.
I want to pick up here the first community question, and I want to break it also a little bit down. The question is, why don't you guys reply in Telegram? Your team members are missing from there. If you are about transparency, what about the validator votes related to you guys? Maybe like to break a little bit down. Do you think you are doing enough in terms of community communication and reacting on questions that also have been raised, for example, on the hub?
Sure. I mean, uh, my personal preference on communication is long form threads uh, on the forum. I think this is the right place to exchange ideas, because that's where you can, drive like real, like, thoughts processing, like deep thought processing. That's Telegram. I don't think it's the right medium for that. uh, so that's the first part of the answer. The second part of the answer is, we've already done a session, like an almost 2 hour session AMA with the entire team. We're here today, right? Being asked some tough questions, but those questions are legitimate, so we need to answer them. We will schedule a final AMA probably this weekend or early next week. I'm also going to talk with the French community, because I also speak French, with Dylan from Imperator, who's on the multisig. Rina talking with is gonna do a podcast with the Russian community. I mean, there is only so much we can do, right? But we would like to be everywhere, but we still have like other, like, important things to do. So yeah, that would be my answer. Like, we're doing as much as we can to communicate clearly and be there for the community. And like, also, like, there is, like, my Calendly link is open, Better Future as well, Benji as well. To be honest, I was a bit disappointed that, like, I didn't get scheduled much. Like, I had maybe like 3-4 calls. Like 80% of them were people trying to sell me something, so they were not really interested by the Cosmos Hub himself itself. Yeah, but, like, by all means, like, reach out to me. Like, there is a Calendly link. It's up to date. There's still a lot of availabilities. It's open for the next like 2 weeks. So, like, if you want, like, to get first-hand information directly from the one of the person who's running this program, just come to me, book a meeting. We can talk for 45 minutes. And yeah, I mean, we have nothing to hide, right? So yeah, please book a Calendly link with me.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to insert this also into the section below. So after this live stream, you will be able to find Youssef's Calendly link. Also because we won't be able to pick up all of these questions. But yeah, maybe this is also a pretty important one here. Last but not least, also to get more context on Ryan Orr. So since he is not as well known, I would say, in the Cosmos ecosystem compared to you, Youssef, and Xavier. So maybe you could, like, briefly touch on his background.
I mean, yeah, Ryan Orr, I think, is gonna be like super critical to the success of this program. Probably more critical than myself. Like, Ryan has been in blockchain for a long, long time. Like, he's a true Cosmos, like a crypto OG. He discovered Ethereum very, like, early days. He's a successful seed investor. He's consistently ranked top 10 in Angel List as an investor. He does like 100 seed investments every year. And I don't know the details about, like, what projects he founded with the Ripple Accelerator, but all I have to say is good things about Ryan. And he's like very process oriented, so that's going to be critical to build the right structure, the right internal structure for the DAO to be effective. And look, he's also a cosmonaut, right? Like, maybe not as visible as myself or Xavier, but like, he's been there for a pretty long time, but he's more of a discreet person. He's not a very public person, so that's why, like, you won't see him like tweet a lot or on Telegram, etc. But I trust him 100%, and he's gonna be like a great addition to this team.
Just to add as well, maybe. So yeah, Youssef has selected Ryan, but just the way that he coordinates and communicates, with us and the 7 to 9 of us right now, and like how he's liaising between hub stakeholders and with us, like You can already see he's a great leader, but like in terms of his personal accolades as well, you know, he's had, I think, 6 like 50x sort of returns in VC world. He's also started up like 3 software companies. You know, he knows that have raised like over 50 million. I think in a sense, it's actually a nice thing he's outside of Cosmos. He's probably not so biased towards things that perhaps some of us are. Like he has like a differing opinion. I think it's nice to have diversity in the team, and he's got a bunch of experience. So I think in a sense, like, it's really positive that we've managed to get him and he's offering his time to join us. And I think maybe not the worst idea potentially if he himself potentially the next few days, you know, writes up a little bit on Twitter or something, or even on the Hub forum, just giving some examples of some things he's done, because he's certainly done them. So if it's not so clear right now, like, we should definitely communicate that more. And I think we'll aspire to do so in the near future.
And he does have a very impressive, how do you say, contact list, basically. How do you say, Xavier, like in English?
Network.
Network. Like he has a very strong network. Like sometimes, like he gives me names like that he knows. Like I almost don't trust him, but he's a very impressive person. So yeah.
Yeah, I think actually, yeah, especially just on that as well, actually, which might be interesting for the community to know. You know, so Ryan's a guy that's very connected with like Web2 developers, especially. And I think these are the typical types of developers that have a lot of talent that we would love to bring into the Cosmos, that he's connected to and can bring into the ecosystem.
Nice. I think thanks for the insights, guys. But yeah, as you can see, we still got so many questions. So what I will do is I will definitely do a Twitter thread out of this for tomorrow. So this will come out on Friends and also on my personal one. And again, guys, if you have like urgent questions to ask, we will link Youssef's Calendly link in the description below. And maybe we can do like another session anytime soon. And you guys are also doing like another AMA soon. So your questions will be heard. With that being said, thank you, guys. Thank you, Youssef. Thank you, Xavier, for taking the time. And yeah, thanks to you guys. Thanks for watching. Thank you so much for taking governance in the Cosmos ecosystem seriously. And it's a pleasure to see you guys involved. So yeah, thank you, Cosmonauts. And I hope I will see you the next time.
Thank you very much, guys. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Ciao.